Right now, without leaving your chair, you can try a Japanese hand technique that takes only a few minutes. It looks almost too simple to matter. You gently hold one finger, slow your breathing, and move from one finger to the next. But here's the interesting part. The traditional explanation and the scientific explanation are not exactly the same. So today, we're going to try the technique first, then separate what comes from Japanese tradition from what researchers have actually been able to measure. Let's begin. Put one hand comfortably in front of you. With your other hand, gently wrap your fingers around your thumb. Don't squeeze, just hold it, almost as if you're protecting something fragile. Now breathe in slowly for 4 seconds, and breathe out for 6. Again, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Keep holding your thumb for about 1 minute. In the traditional system of Jin Shin Jyutsu, the thumb is associated with worry. You don't have to believe that connection. You don't even have to feel anything unusual. Just stay there and notice your breathing. Now move to your index finger. Wrap your hand around it gently. Again, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. In the tradition, the index finger is associated with fear. Maybe you notice your shoulders dropping. Maybe your breathing becomes slower. Or maybe nothing happens at all. That's fine. The technique doesn't require a dramatic sensation to be useful. Now move to the middle finger. Hold it gently. This finger is traditionally associated with anger. Keep your breathing slow. Don't force the breath deeper than feels comfortable. Just make the exhale slightly longer than the inhale. Move to your ring finger. In Jin Shin Jyutsu, this finger is connected with sadness and grief. Stay here for another minute. And finally, the little finger. Traditionally, it's associated with effort, trying, and feelings connected to self-worth. Hold it gently. 1 more minute. That's the entire technique. 5 fingers. A few minutes. Almost no equipment. But where did this strange idea come from? The practice is associated with Jin Shin Jyutsu, a Japanese healing tradition that was developed and revived in the early 20th century by Jiro Murai. According to the tradition, Murai explored these practices after experiencing a serious illness and later taught what he had learned to others. The system eventually spread outside Japan through students and teachers. But there's an important distinction here. Jin Shin Jyutsu is a traditional practice, not a scientifically established system, proving that specific fingers control specific emotions. The thumb to worry, index to fear, middle to anger pattern is part of the tradition. Researchers have not demonstrated that each finger contains a measurable pathway specifically responsible for one emotion. So why are people still interested in it? Because when researchers have actually tested Jin Shin Jyutsu as a whole, some interesting results have appeared. One randomized controlled study involving 41 nurses found that participants who learned Jin Shin Jyutsu self-help techniques experienced reductions in self-reported stress, with some improvements remaining weeks after the training. Another small study followed 29 women with breast cancer who received 10 weekly Jin Shin Jyutsu sessions. Participants reported improvements in adaptation and daily functioning, although the researchers specifically noted that the study was small and called for larger research. That's interesting, but it still doesn't prove that holding your thumb removes worry or that holding your middle finger removes anger. And honestly, that's where the story gets more interesting, because the part of this technique that has stronger scientific support may not be the finger mapping at all. It may be the breathing and attention. Look at what you've been doing for the last few minutes. You've stopped moving. You've placed gentle pressure on your hand. You've focused your attention on one physical sensation. And you've deliberately slowed your breathing. That combination matters. A systematic review of slow breathing research found that slow breathing can influence autonomic nervous system activity and is associated with increased heart rate variability and reductions in measures related to anxiety and emotional arousal. Another review examined 58 studies involving regulated breathing practices and found that many interventions produced improvements in stress or anxiety, although the researchers also emphasized that results vary depending on the technique and how consistently it is practiced. A separate meta-analysis of 40 randomized controlled trials also found evidence that respiratory-focused interventions can improve anxiety symptoms, while noting substantial variation between studies. So the science doesn't need the mystical explanation to explain why you might feel calmer. When you deliberately slow your breathing, especially by making the exhale longer, you're changing the rhythm of your respiratory system. That can influence the body's autonomic regulation and reduce the feeling of being constantly switched on. And then there's the other part people often underestimate: attention. Anxiety tends to pull your attention toward the future. What could happen? What if something goes wrong? What happens tomorrow? What did I forget? Holding one finger gives your attention somewhere concrete to go. You can feel the pressure. You can notice the warmth of your hand. You can count the breath. For a few minutes, instead of chasing 10 thoughts, you're following one sensation. That's very close to the basic mechanism behind many mindfulness practices, deliberately bringing attention back to what is happening right now. And this may explain why such a simple practice can feel surprisingly powerful for some people. You don't need to believe that energy is flowing through a particular finger. You don't need to believe that your thumb contains worry. You simply need to pause. The traditional explanation gives the practice a story. The breathing gives your body a rhythm. The gentle touch gives your mind an anchor. And the repetition gives you a small ritual you can return to whenever you feel overwhelmed. There's also something psychologically important about the fact that you can do it almost anywhere. You don't need a gym. You don't need equipment. Nobody has to know you're doing it. You can hold your thumb while sitting in a car, waiting for an appointment, sitting at your desk, or lying in bed. And because the movement is so subtle, it doesn't require you to escape the situation. You're not running away from the stressful moment. You're creating a small pause inside it. But there's one thing I want to make clear. This isn't a replacement for professional treatment if you're dealing with persistent or severe anxiety. A breathing exercise can be a useful calming tool, but it isn't a cure for an anxiety disorder. And if slow breathing makes you dizzy or uncomfortable, stop and return to your normal breathing. The goal is not to force relaxation, it's to give your nervous system a chance to settle. So let's look at what just happened. You held your thumb, traditionally associated with worry, your index finger, associated with fear, your middle finger, associated with anger, your ring finger, associated with sadness, and your little finger, associated with effort and self-worth. 5 fingers, 5 emotional associations. But scientifically, the strongest part of the explanation is probably much simpler. You slowed down, touched something gently, and gave your attention one place to rest. Maybe that's the real reason this kind of practice survives. Not because every traditional explanation has been scientifically proven, but because humans have always needed simple ways to stop, breathe, and return to the present. 5 minutes can sound insignificant. But 5 uninterrupted minutes without scrolling, rushing, reacting, or solving anything is surprisingly rare. Maybe the technique isn't powerful because your fingers contain magical pathways. Maybe it's powerful because, for 5 minutes, you finally give yourself permission to be still. So try it again tonight, when your mind feels crowded. Hold one finger. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out a little longer. And instead of asking, Is this really working? Simply notice what your body is doing. Which finger felt the most calming to you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.